Dreams turned to dust. The price of chasing illusions. The light filters through faded curtains, illuminating dust motes drifting across a room too quiet for comfort. An old man sits alone in a beige armchair, framed by walls cluttered with unopened books and framed photographs. One shows a younger version of himself and his wife, arms around each other in front of a cheap cruise poster tacked to their kitchen wall. He stares at it now with a tired smile that doesn't reach his eyes. In the next room, she's folding laundry that no one will wear out. Their passports remain unused in a drawer beneath old tax returns and half-finished to-do lists. They had dreams once. Retire early, travel through Europe, build a house on that hill by the coast. But they chased numbers. They followed advice that told them to aim for bigger, faster, more. And they believed the lie that retirement would be the reward for their sacrifices. They worked overtime, skipped birthdays, avoided small pleasures to save for someday, but someday it kept moving. And inflation kept creeping, and markets kept crashing, and debt kept growing. Now the house they thought they'd build only exists in the lines of a sketch he once drew on a napkin. She kept it in a drawer all these years. They unfold it sometimes, not to plan, but to mourn. It's not just about the money. It's about the time they traded for it, the memories that never happened, the joy they postponed. And still, they did what they were told. They followed the script. College, mortgage, career ladder, retirement fund. But the numbers never added up to the life they imagined. Their fridge hums in the background. An old calendar still hangs on the wall, 5 years out of date. They have enough to survive, but not enough to feel alive. Their friends, the ones who dared to live while working, are either gone or out living still. They scroll through Facebook feeds, filled with the adventures of others, and wonder when exactly it all slipped away. This is the cost of chasing illusions, of believing that wealth means sacrifice without intention. Those dreams can be bought later. The tragedy isn't just in what they lost. It's in the realization that they never had to lose it in the first place. What they needed wasn't more money. It was more courage to live on purpose, not just in pursuit. So now they sit in a quiet home, surrounded by things they saved for, but never truly lived through. And that silence speaks louder than any balance sheet ever could. Think about that and ask yourself, what are you chasing? And what might it be quietly costing you? The hidden pain, understanding financial regret. It's easy to plan a future when everything goes right. It's harder to admit how rarely that happens. Morgan Housel once wrote, "Regret is what you get when you didn't allow room for error." And that's exactly what you see in the quiet pain of so many retirees today. They weren't lazy. They weren't irresponsible. They were simply too certain, too sure the market would keep rising, too sure their health would last, too sure they'd always have time to catch up later. But life doesn't follow spreadsheets. It hits with layoffs, illnesses, recessions, unexpected family emergencies. And when your financial plan is built on a tightrope with no safety net, even one misstep can unravel decades of effort. That's the hidden pain of retirement regret. Not just the numbers, but the crushing realization that you didn't leave space for the unpredictable. You didn't think humility mattered. You thought being smart was enough. You thought confidence would protect you. But confidence without humility is a setup for disappointment. There's a kind of quiet shame in financial regret. It creeps in late at night, in the silence after the news shuts off. You replay decisions from years ago, whispering, "Why didn't I see this coming?" But the truth is, no one sees it coming. That's the point. Housel's work reminds us. It's not about predicting the future. It's about respecting how uncertain it truly is. The smartest thing you can do with your money isn't to bet boldly. It's to plan softly, with space to bend without breaking. Humility isn't weakness. It's protection. It's knowing that you might be wrong and preparing anyway. It's saving a little more than you think you need, spending a little less than you can afford, choosing options that feel boring but keep you safe. Because in the end, regret isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the heavy breath before opening a bill you weren't expecting, the hollow smile at a friend's vacation photos, the silent wondering if it's too late to fix what's been lost. That's the emotional weight of financial regret. And it often comes not from ignorance, but from pride. So as you think about your own future, ask yourself not, what's the smartest thing I can do, but what's the most humble thing I can do? Because the ones who retire with peace aren't the ones who had it all figured out. They're the ones who knew they couldn't and planned with that truth in mind. Lives in ruins, stories of irreversible choices. He once drove a Mercedes. Now he watches buses from the porch of a rented studio apartment he never thought he'd live in. A man who used to lead quarterly meetings in corner offices now avoids eye contact with former colleagues at the grocery store. Morgan Housel told his story of a retiree who built his entire financial life on the assumption that markets would always recover in time. He retired just before the 2008 crash, and he never recovered. He didn't just lose money. He lost pride. He lost peace. He lost the version of himself he thought was permanent. There's another story, a woman who cashed out her retirement early to fund her son's tech startup. She believed in him, in the dream, in the promise of big returns. Now she lives with her daughter, sleeping on a fold-out bed, smiling for the grandkids, while silently calculating how long her savings will last. The startup failed in its third year. She never told her friends what she did. You hear these stories and realize financial pain doesn't scream. It lingers. It drips into every corner of daily life, awkward dinners, strained marriages, lost confidence. And what's most brutal isn't the numbers. It's irreversible. There's no rewind button for a retirement fund you spent too fast. No reset for a home you sold too early. No undo for a loan you co-signed out of pride or pressure. Morgan Housel wrote about another man who had millions, but he couldn't stop chasing more. He made riskier bets, confident he was too smart to lose. And he did lose. All of it. He's still alive, but he's not really living. His days are quiet, his nights are long, and his greatest regret isn't the money. It's the way he ignored the warnings. These aren't just cautionary tales. They're emotional autopsies. They show what happens when financial arrogance silences humility, when certainty overrules caution. It's not enough to earn well or invest smartly. You have to stay humble. You have to stay flexible. You have to leave space for things not to go as planned. Because when they don't, when the deal falls through, when the illness comes, when the economy turns, it's not just your bank account that pays the price. It's your peace of mind, your relationships, your sense of self-worth. These stories are a mirror. They force us to ask hard questions, not how much can I make, but how much can I lose and still be okay? Not what's the best case scenario, but what happens if I'm wrong? Because once the ruin arrives, there's no deal to undo it, no investment clever enough to fix it, only time left to live inside the consequences. And that is the true price of financial miscalculation. Not loss, but regret that never ends. The power of humility, building margin for error. Not all retirements are marked by regret. Some are defined by quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't show off, but sleeps well at night. There's a couple in their late 60s living just outside a modest town. They still drive the same Toyota they bought over a decade ago. They travel, but never first class. They dine out, but never to impress. Their neighbours assume they just got lucky. But luck had very little to do with it. They spent years ignoring trends, skipping the hot stocks, and refusing to inflate their lifestyle every time they got a raise. Instead, they saved more. They planned not for what they hoped would happen, but for what might. When his company laid him off unexpectedly at 59, they didn't panic. They had a cushion, not just financially, but emotionally. They'd lived below their means for decades. So the blow landed, but it didn't break them. Morgan Housel wrote, "The most important part of every plan is planning on your plan, not going according to plan." That's the mindset they lived by. Not fear, not pessimism, just humility. There's also Thomas, a retired school principal who never made six figures but never felt poor. He lived in the same house for 40 years. He invested modestly, avoided debt, and never assumed he was smarter than the market. When a surprise medical condition drained part of his savings, he didn't spiral. He'd built his life around margin. Not every dollar was spoken for. He could absorb the shock, not because he predicted it, but because he prepared for something to go wrong. That's what humility does. It whispers, you might not see it coming, but you can still be ready. There's a kind of strength in these retirees, not flashy, not loud, but deeply rooted in emotional security. They don't worry when the news screams recession. They don't panic when prices rise. They adjust, because they never pretended to be invincible in the first place. Financial humility means accepting you might be wrong. It means avoiding debt, not just because it's risky, but because life is. It means saving more than you think you'll need, not because you're scared, but because you're wise. These are the people who walk through retirement with steady steps. Not because they won the game, but because they respected the rules. Their wealth isn't measured by cars or square footage. It's measured by peace, by the ability to absorb shocks without unraveling, by mornings that start without dread and nights that end without worry. Humility doesn't show up on your net worth statement, but it shapes every part of your future. And in the words of Housel, the only way to be comfortably wrong is to plan to be wrong. That's not fear. It's freedom. Freedom is not bought with luck, but with the courage to prepare for a future you can't control. Moment of truth, facing financial reality. He stood in the middle of his garage, surrounded by unopened boxes labelled Ski Trip 2024 and Italy Plans. It was quiet except for the soft ticking of a wall clock he hadn't noticed in years. Robert was 62. Retirement was around the corner, but the numbers didn't lie anymore. He'd been lying to himself, saying he'd be fine, that the stock market would bounce back, that there was still time. But the spreadsheets told a different story. He sat down on a folding chair, heart heavy, and pulled out a notebook. Savings, thinner than he thought. Debt, higher than he admitted. Pension, not enough. The dream trips, the new boat he almost financed, the renovations he'd been planning. None of it made sense anymore. His wife found him there an hour later. Eyes red, notebook open on his lap. He didn't pretend anymore. He looked her in the eye and said, "I messed up. I wanted us to live big, but I didn't plan for us to live long." There was no anger in her face, only a softness he hadn't seen in years. She sat beside him, took his hand and whispered, "Then let's fix it now, while we still can." That moment, that choice to face the truth, was his turning point. He sold the second car, he downsized their home, he cancelled the dream trips and started learning how to cook the meals they used to dine out for. It wasn't shameful. It was freeing. For the first time, he wasn't chasing appearances or trying to impress anyone. He was planning with clarity, not denial. He was building the future, not escaping it. And the peace that followed surprised him. No more nights lying awake doing silent math. No more pretending. There's a unique power in that kind of honesty, a kind of emotional weight that lifts the moment you stop lying to yourself. His story reminds us, You don't need to wait until it's too late. There is strength, not weakness, in saying, I was wrong, but I'm not done. Because real financial wisdom begins the moment we stop defending our past and start protecting our future. Humility saved him. Courage moved him forward. And that single painful moment of truth, it gave him back control of the rest of his life. Your critical crossroads, regret or wisdom. Right now, you're standing at a crossroads. It's quiet, but it's powerful. And what you choose from here shapes more than just your bank account. It shapes your peace of mind, your future, your freedom. On one side is the easy path, the dream that sounds impressive, looks exciting, feeds your pride. Big houses, fast returns, bold investments with no margin for error. It feels good until it doesn't. That path is paved with overconfidence, with assumptions that things will just work out, that you'll earn more next year, that you'll retire early if you just make one more risky move. But ask the retirees who took that path where it led. They'll tell you about the nights they stare at ceilings, about the shame they carry silently, about the photos of trips never taken, homes never bought, moments forever gone. Because when pride guides your finances, regret often becomes your companion. And some mistakes once made can't be undone. But there's another path. It doesn't shine. It doesn't impress anyone at parties, but it protects. It's the path of humility. The courage to admit, I don't know what the future holds, so I'll plan like I don't. It means saving more than feels necessary, spending less than you think you can afford, choosing boring stability over thrilling risk. It's not flashy, but it's powerful. Because what you gain on that path is more than financial security. You gain emotional security. You gain quiet mornings without panic, dinners without dread, a retirement that feels like freedom, not survival. Morgan Housel said it best. You have to give yourself room for error because you don't get a second chance at retirement. So this is your moment, your critical decision point. Will you let pride lead you into irreversible regret? Or will you choose the strength it takes to be humble now and grateful later? The road of wisdom starts with one honest choice. Make it now while there's still time. Escaping regret. Choosing financial humility. Regret doesn't come all at once. It builds slowly. Missed opportunities, ignored warnings, moments when pride whispered louder than caution. But it doesn't have to end that way. There's still time to choose differently, to step off the path of assumptions and into the quiet power of humility. Morgan Housel reminds us, you can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune if your mistakes aren't fatal. That's the truth most people ignore. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be prepared. Financial humility isn't fear, it's freedom. It's the freedom to live without panic, to retire without shame, to face the future with a steady hand and a clear mind. It's not about what you hope will happen. It's about being strong enough to plan for what might go wrong. When you choose humility, you escape the trap of pride. You trade the fantasy of fast success for the reality of lasting peace. So, if you're ready to let go of the pressure, pretending, the denial, if you're ready to build a future that feels safe, not just impressive, comment below, no more regrets. Let that be your first step toward a wiser, quieter, freer financial life. Because this is only the beginning. There are deeper truths still waiting. More stories, more wisdom, more choices that could change everything. Stay with us. There's more to uncover. And the next step might just be the one that saves your future.